Turns out empathy is a secret weapon to success in leadership and negotiation. On today's show, we're going to be talking about that link and also what Buffy the Vampire Slayer can teach you about life and leadership. Stay tuned. Welcome to today's show. I'm so excited to have you here with our guest, Elisa Camahort Page. Hi, Elisa. How are you?
Hi, Maria. I'm great. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, I'm excited to talk about empathy as a competitive weapon, a secret weapon, particularly for negotiation. As you know, empathy is a topic near and dear to my heart with my new book, The Empathy Edge, coming out this fall. But let me tell you a little bit about Elisa because she's super rad and she's a great friend of mine. And I just admire her beyond belief. She's been known as the co-founder and COO of BlogHer, which I think, Elisa, that was like one of the biggest women's media companies for a while. I don't know if it still is or...
Yes, for quite some time, we had the largest digital audience across the web.
Fantastic. And now Elisa is focused on speaking, writing, and consulting with entrepreneurs, thought leaders, organizations who are looking to do better, be better, collaborate better, and communicate better. And her debut book, which I highly recommend, Roadmap for Revolutionaries, was published last fall. And it's a great hands-on guide for how to get involved and become an activist and reshape your world or your country, wherever you are, about causes you care about most. And her guiding principle is that innovation plus empathy is greater than innovation plus efficiency, which again, near and dear to my heart. So welcome, Elisa. Thank you for being with us today. And yeah, I think I got everything in there, right? You've been at this game for a while, at the tech game for a while.
Yes, for more than 20 years.
Oh my goodness. Oh my God. Yeah. And I know you've seen it all. We could have probably other episodes just about that. But today I really do want to dig in with you about empathy as a secret weapon. And I want to first talk about your insatiable love for Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And for anyone who's watching this that has never seen this show, which ran from 1997 to 2003, can you just give us a brief 30-second, what was this show about and why is this show and Buffy as a heroine so rich with leadership lessons for you?
So on its surface, Buffy the Vampire Slayer was a TV show that came out of a flop movie, in fact.
Yes.
And it was about a girl who was in high school in Southern California, and it turns out she's the chosen one. Every age has its vampire slayer, and it's her job to rid the world of demons and vampires and other no-good-nicks. Mm-hmm. And her high school, Sunnydale High, happens to sit on what is called the Hellmouth. So there's just a lot of demon activity going on throughout the 7 seasons. So on its surface, it's about a young girl becoming a woman and being a superhero with superpowers. Mm-hmm. But underneath, it's yes, about the young girl becoming a woman and how her superpowers are never enough to fight the big bads in the world all by themselves. She needs her team, her mortal team of they call themselves the Scooby Gang after Scooby. She needed teamwork, and often sacrifice was involved. And she never just went out there and did it alone. And I think in an environment where people are sort of encouraged to think of themselves as lone warriors, where we have this myth of the solo founder, most recently demonstrated in how people talk about Mackenzie Bezos versus Jeff Bezos. But it happens in a lot of particularly tech companies where we get this myth of the solo founder that just had this vision and created huge value by themselves. Mm-hmm. And I really love that this series is all about, at the end of the day, everyone contributes and everyone has something unique and valuable to contribute. And it doesn't have to be super strength or being a witch who can do magic. Sometimes, it's just being a human with a heart who can save the world with love. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a really necessary message.
Absolutely. In today's world. And do you think that, I know we're going to kind of get into this question later, so I'm going to veer off a little bit, but what what role do you think empathy played in that dynamic on that show? Like, was that where you first started thinking about empathy being a key ingredient to making things happen?
Well, I think that I maybe had been thinking a lot of the sacrifice element, the teamwork element, the everybody contributes element for quite some time. I didn't really start thinking about this innovation plus empathy being greater than innovation plus efficiency until a few years ago, when I started to see the rise of what is called the gig economy, or the even worse, called the sharing economy.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, I remember actually the moment when I think I came up with that mantra was when WAG, a dog walking app, got $1 billion valuation. And I thought, you know, for decades and decades, people have gotten their dogs walked through neighborhood kids or through their neighbors or through small businesses. You know, dogs have been walked.
Yes, this is not new.
And now we have this middle person who is facilitating it, probably mostly focused on a certain class level of customer for whom they can pay the premium, and turning all those people who could have been small business owners themselves into contractors without benefits, without great pay, without sharing in this $1 billion valuation to even a tiny degree. You know, when Lyft goes public, and I use Lyft, I use a lot of these services. When Lyft went public last week, you know, how many Lyft drivers own any of that stock?
Mm-hmm.
And so we have this rise in this kind of economy of people who are actually delivering the services having no share of the wealth. And it's just, to me, it's exacerbating some of the problems we already have. And it all is about making life just a little bit more efficient for people who are already privileged. And again, I use all these apps feeling slightly guilty as I do so, but, you know, DoorDash, Grubhub, Instacart, Lyft, you know, I use these things.
Right.
But is this really what the greatest minds of, in our case, Silicon Valley, is this what we're focused on? How to, like, as I saw someone put it, you know, take over the role of your mother and, like, get shit done for you.
Right,
you know?
right.
Is this the best we can come up with when it comes to innovating? Is this where we're putting all our money? Is this what is getting all the higher valuations? Where are we solving real world problems? And where are we thinking about the unintended consequences of creating this kind of model and what it does to a workforce, or in the case of social platforms, what it does to users when your model is based on sharing data about users? So, and then once I started thinking that way, it was really easy to go back and start watching Buffy through a different lens, you know? So I think it's kind of chicken egg.
Right. Well, and actually in researching my book, I came across a lot of studies proving that teams with more empathy exhibit more innovation. And Google, who, you know, started out thinking the only qualified people to do any work for them were computer science experts, were the ones that did these studies and said, oh, we actually found out our most innovative and profitable ideas came from teams with a large amount of empathy. And we're seeing this all over the place now in tech a little bit. And to your point earlier about the role of empathy and innovation, you know, Om Malik, who is a technologist and an investor, had a great quote about the fact that we've got to think beyond, and I'm completely paraphrasing because I can't remember the exact quote offhand, but this idea of we have to think empathetically about the effects of our innovation. Like, we can't just be innovating for innovation's sake, but we have to look further down the road and say, how is this impacting people's livelihoods? How is this impacting people's wealth? How, you know, yes, on the surface, this might seem to make everyone's life easier, and this is super cool, but are we thinking about the long-term effects? And it's sort of his call to arms of Silicon Valley and other tech innovators to say, you've got to take this mindset. And I think, I can't remember what tech company it is, maybe you know, that they actually have like an ethics head now. I don't know if it's Google or
Salesforce might have just appointed one.
Yeah, maybe.
I think, you know, it's interesting because this is not a new problem, right? I just went to a conference in Santa Fe, which is very close to Los Alamos, which is where the nuclear bomb was basically created. And those people had a lot of misgivings about what they were doing. A lot of technical innovation has served two very different markets. A lot of innovation has started first when it comes to the internet, especially for porn.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of innovation has happened for the military.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nothing new that innovation is driven sometimes by whether it's money, whether it's other kinds of motivations. But then, there is always that fork in the road of decides when to start using that innovation for evil instead of good.
Exactly. So how do you think that, because again, you're so influenced by life and leadership lessons from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, is that something that you thought that the writing in that show did a good job of talking about? Or do you think that, how do you think that related?
Well, yes, because I think they used this background of high school and our high school insecurities and our high school cliques and our high school, fear about the future. And they used it and they manifested it as various demons visiting town.
Right.
Usually
they personified it. Yeah.
Personified it. And usually it was representative. But I think there was also always this aspect of, like there's there was a whole addiction storyline around witchcraft. So there's a character who, Buffy's best friend basically discovers that she has, when she starts learning how to be a witch, she has very superpowers. She is a very powerful witch. And it's treated like it's so easy to go over the edge into doing things that are good. Then you start doing things where you had good intentions, but you really probably shouldn't have done them that way.
Right.
And at some point she and then she always says she's going to quit and she's going to stop doing stuff like that, but it's very hard to let it go. And eventually she almost destroys the world because in a moment of rage and grief, she uses that power she has for evil. And she goes very, very dark. And it's this beloved character you've known for 6 seasons or whatever. And she goes very dark. And so I think there was always, and that's just one example, there was always this element of, things can go either way. We make choices. We lose sight of ourselves. We lose sight of our moral compass. And that can happen to good people. It's not just evil, bad people you can separate yourself from.
Right.
That things can go either way. And when I look at what happens with, for instance, the social network companies, I'm like, I don't think these people set out to create a cesspool of online harassment.
Absolutely not. I don't think they probably even envisioned it. I mean, maybe later on they started to see that there could be that potential.
But the problem was that even when they started being told, hey, the stuff's happening here that's not okay, and you guys should really do something to rein that in, they didn't want to take the responsibility for the magic that they had created.
Right.
And they basically, at some point, they let it go over to the dark side, and now they're trying to figure out how to bring it back to the light. And it's hard because they've let it go.
Right. Well, and what about this idea of, and maybe kind of getting away from empathy a little bit, this key component of forging a mutually beneficial partnership? I think you also have some great lessons that Buffy taught you, or that Buffy helped articulate for you what you were already seeing. But what are some of those key components to forging that, whether it's a mutually beneficial relationship between like a company and its customers, like we're talking about, or even just one-on-one with work colleagues or in your personal life?
Right. So when I think about, I often start, because a lot of people used to ask how my 2 co-founders at BlogHer, Lisa Stone and Joy Desjardins, how we stayed together, the 3 of us running the company for 9 years until we were acquired. And that's an unusual story. We had people who would ask it because we were women and they assumed women couldn't get along, which is...
Right. They were watching too much reality TV, but
yeah, whatever. It's an unusual story in the startup world, no matter who the founders are. And I always used to say, I think there are 3 things that you need to look for and 3 things that often break up partnerships. And the first is complementary skills, not overlapping skills. So I think what often happens in startups is you have people from the same disciplines trying to create something. And not only does it give you a more homogenous view of what you're creating, but it leads to more butting heads over who's got the right idea. Lisa, Jory, and I, like, we brought different backgrounds and skills to the table. So on any given thing, one of us was likely to be more the voice of more experience and expertise, while the other two of us could be the voice of new, like, well, we don't have that background, so let me ask the stupid question, you know.
Right, exactly.
And so that allowed us also to carve up the pie without a lot of feeling of territorialism or hurt feelings about it. So I think complementary skills is one of the most important things you can have to try and address not becoming homogenous and not seeing the potential unintended consequences. You have more perspective. The second thing I would say is that you have to have pretty similar work ethics. And it's not that you all have to be type A, super driven, no work-life balance people, which I think Lisa, Jory, and I each were. But it's not that you have to all be that way. It's that you all have to be at about the same level of investment and intensity and agree that that's the right level of investment and intensity. So you could be more chill. And as long as you're all okay with being more chill, that's great. Right. But you have to somehow agree on what the level of work is, because partnerships break up because someone isn't pulling their weight all the time. And then the third aspect, I think, is that you have to be able to have tough conversations, not just the fun conversations. It's really fun when you first start having an idea and you're talking about, oh, we could do this, we could do that, blah, blah, blah. But then you miss your quarterly numbers, or then you hire someone and they're the wrong hire, or then, you know, you lose a big customer and they're not happy with you. Like, stuff happens, and you have to be able to talk about why, and you have to be able to try and fix it. And so I think all of those things are also really great for partnerships as well, to look for partners where you're each filling a hole the other one doesn't have, where you're each going to contribute the same amount to it and get the same amount from it, and where you can talk about and adjust if things aren't going well. And so many partnerships, you know, there's this unequal dynamic, and it doesn't typically really serve the partnership if one partner feels superior to the other, or that you need me more than I need you. Those aren't exactly great. That's not a great foundation for a kind of partnership, you know. It's not a great foundation for really, as you pointed out, for really all of these things, for really any relationship. Right. It's not a great foundation if it's based on a sense of unequalness.
Exactly. And I think that's really where that role of empathy comes in, is because you've got to have people willing to look outside of themselves and willing to see another person's point of view, even if they don't agree. You know, that's what I was always butting up against as I was writing this book was, you know, well, empathy is about giving in, and empathy is about just giving. No, it's like, no, that's submission. That's not empathy, right? Empathy is about being willing to say, okay, we have this disagreement. Like, let me understand your perspective and your side. Let me try to see things from your point of view, and then come into, and so a lot of that, I think, stems from even, you know, what you're talking about is like setting those expectations and having those conversations, and not sort of saying like, I know everything and everything is from my point of view.
Valuing what the other party brings to the table.
Exactly.
And also knowing that everything you want isn't of equal importance even to you. So why would it be of equal importance to someone else? I always think about, I've been to a few events with my local congressperson over the last couple of years, and someone asked her once, well, I know you agree with me. Why should I call you about all the things I care about? And she says, but I have to compromise. Like, I'm not allowed to just get everything I want. I have to know where are my places where I can give in a little, because and I know what my constituents really care about by the volume of calls. So I can think it's all the right thing. I can know all the things I think are the right thing, but I'm not going to get all of that. So what am I really going to go for as hard as I possibly can, knowing my constituents want that the very most, versus what am I going to say, okay, we're going to have to defer that till next time because we're not going to get it all right now.
Right. I'm not hearing enough people say that they want that. So yeah, exactly.
So I think that's true in any negotiation, you know, that you're not going to get, the whole point of negotiating is that you each give a little. You don't just get a lot, you know, you each give a little. And so you have to be really aware of your priorities. And if you can try to pre-understand and get in the head of their priorities,
right,
so much the better. Because, you know, you can have a sense of, you know, you don't want to negotiate against yourself, but if you, it's sort of like chess, right?
mm-hmm.
You can anticipate where they're going to go on their side of the table.
Mm-hmm.
It can help you get there quicker, if nothing else. Like, I just find that sometimes when you're willing to tell people, look, you know, we both want something beneficial out of this. Here's the bottom line of what I want. Here's the bottom line of what I can give you. Can we cut to the chase? Mm-hmm. Like, I think instead of thinking about negotiation as war, which I think is often, I think of it as, I don't know, party planning. Like, how do we get all the pieces in place, you know,
right,
so we can get this party started?
Right. I love that. I love that so much. Well, and do you actually, now that you're doing consulting, are you working with companies and partnerships to overcome those challenges? Are you almost in a way coaching them through some of that?
Well, a lot of what I coach people through is, at least organizations, is about how in their marketing, typically in their marketing and content and storytelling, how to think about inclusivity, to think about those unintended consequences, to produce something that speaks to their whole audience and isn't leaving anyone out because it's not their natural first thought to think about those folks. Mm-hmm. So a lot of it is, it's another application of empathy, which mm-hmm. is to say, if you want the kind of audience or community or customer base that is inclusive, that is expansive, how are you going to put yourself in a position of understanding what people not like you want to hear and want to see mm-hmm. in your product? How can you open up your mind to have empathy for a bigger audience, a bigger community? You know, because I don't think you get that bigger audience or community until you've developed some empathy for the people that you want to have there.
Absolutely. So you kind of touched on this already a little bit, but what role specifically do you think empathy plays in that negotiation process? So you're going in a negotiation. Let's say there's someone watching this interview that says, I'm not particularly empathetic. And, you know, that's a lot of what my book is addressing, is about, here's some ways to flex your empathy muscle. But, you know, what can people do to bring in that empathy lens to that negotiation? And I know there's different types of negotiations. There could be the ones where it's like a positive negotiation. There could be ones where it's already fraught with conflict. So what are like one or two things you would suggest to people to bring into that negotiation?
So my main advice actually comes from a Buffy episode.
Awesome.
So this Buffy episode called Earshot, Buffy gets scratched by a demon, which magically gives her the power to hear other people's thoughts. And what she realizes is that people are thinking a lot of negative, dark things all day long. It becomes very overwhelming and sad and angst-ridden to listen to how people talk to themselves, how people think about themselves and think to themselves. Mm-hmm. But she clearly hears somebody thinking that they're going to kill everybody at school the next day. And so she's on the case to figure out who it is and prevent it. Mm-hmm. And she finds the next morning, she finds this student up in the bell tower with a gun, and she tackles him and thinks he was planning to shoot everybody, but he wasn't. He was up there to commit suicide and his rationale was, oh, it's easy for you. You're popular and beautiful. And I'm a loser. Everyone thinks I'm a total loser. Nobody will ever love me. Basically, nobody will ever, mm-hmm. Nobody thinks anything. I don't have any friends. Nobody thinks anything nice about me. And so, informed by her recent 24 hours of hearing what everybody is thinking, she's like, I hate to break it to you, but nobody's really thinking about you much mm-hmm. at all. We are all so caught up in our own shit that we do not spend as much time as you think mm-hmm. judging you.
Right.
And I think how that translates to negotiation is, I think a lot of times when someone comes in a negotiation with a deal point you don't like or doesn't accept your deal point, it's really easy to personalize that. Oh, they are thwarting me, mm-hmm. But they are not actually thinking about, oh, I know Maria wants this and I really don't want her to have it.
Right.
Just cut.
Yeah. Just get it in there.
Yeah. That's not what's happening. They aren't mm-hmm. thinking much about you at all. They're thinking about, I want this, that, and the other. I need to get this. Mm-hmm. And it's coming from what they need and what they feel they want. It's not actually And so if you can remove that sense of it's personal and they're thwarting you purposely, and remove because what I see so often is people just get their backs up, they get angry when they don't get what they want, as opposed to seeing it as a problem to solve. And so I think that's maybe the number one piece of advice, which is to stop thinking that people don't give you what they want because they want to make your life bad.
Right. Assume positive intent. Right.
Yeah, they want to make their life good.
Right.
So is there another way you can help them make your life good and make your life a little better too?
Right. Right.
Every partnership is better when both people feel like their lives are getting better,
For sure. And I think that that's also no matter what you look at in the realm of politics, in the realm of work, in the realm of, it's that ability to say, okay, I'm hearing what you're saying you want. Let me try to look beyond that and think about why you want it, other than assuming you want that just to piss me off. Right?
That's almost never the reason.
Or you want that just because you're a horrible person and you're mean and you hate people and, whatever. So it's like, okay, what is it you're actually trying to get to? Like, what is your, an expert I quoted in the book talked about, when you go into those conflict-ridden situations, it's what is getting to the person's core truth, getting to the person's core intent. And then you can have a conversation about like, okay, well, your method to get to that, I don't agree with, but what you're saying that you want is completely valid. And therefore, let's try to find a way to get to that we're both happy with. Without it being compromising, without it being submission, without it being, so it's just that lens of going into that meeting, assuming positive intent and just saying like, they want what they want for a reason. And it's not because they want to stick it to me.
No, right. Exactly.
Right.
And have, has there ever been anyone in the world who does operate that kind of what? Sure.
Of course. Yeah.
So there are horrible people out there that we don't want to do business with that would do that somehow to establish dominance. But most people, I really believe, don't come into it with that perspective. And I actually find it disarming if you start with what they want and try to figure out, it's disarming to people. It's like they're not used to, it's like the principles of there's one of the martial arts where the principle isn't about resistance, it's about flowing through it. And you if someone attacks you, you go with their movement to offload them from you, as opposed to
because you get them off balance a little bit, because it's like, oh, that wasn't how I expected that to go. Right, exactly.
So in a similar way, if you come in a negotiation with that kind of, look, we both want a positive outcome, tell me, let me hear it, and let's get to it. And I think it's a little disarming. I think people expect to fight because they've been trained to expect to fight, that every negotiation is a war. But, if we want, I don't know why I'd want to partner up with someone I'd go to war with.
Right. Right. And I've actually personally seen you do that in conversations where there was disagreement, and, my first reaction is like fight, defend. And you've been very good about like, well, tell me why you feel that way. And like, explain to me what your position is, and just taking that. And then all of a sudden the person feels listened to and they put their guard down. And then now they're a little bit more receptive to maybe, some of the information you might have to share.
And I do think asking questions is the easiest way to get someone to just really, if someone could just tell you what they really want at their core, it could cut to the chase a lot, right? But a lot of times that's not even what we're focused on. It's just finding out that information. We're focused on positioning and defensiveness, so.
Right. Well, this is all great stuff. So we're going to have some links down below, but tell people really quickly how they can see more of your work, hear more of your viewpoints. Where can they go?
Absolutely. So my website is elisacp.com, ELISACP.com. There's also links to my book there, Roadmap for Revolutionaries, and where I'm speaking and media and stuff like that. And I also am part of 2 consulting consortiums, mentorbureau.com, where we do mentoring for startups, and turnstilegroup.com, turnstile with an E.
Like the bird.
Yes, like the bird, yes. And that's where we're doing consulting around how systems and processes actually impact culture. So while you're building your system to collaborate and communicate more efficiently, make sure you're keeping in mind empathy so that it actually has a positive impact on your culture. And so we work with companies who want to do better and be better, as you said.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. And like I said, the links will be below. Thank you everyone for joining us. If you liked this video, please click like and share it with anyone you know that might be interested. Take care, and I'll see you next time.
Bye.